Nobody in your lives didn't have the right role model to create high-performance people. Would you like your kids to turn out like your parents? I ask another question. Would you like your kids to turn out like you? The answer is no. So if you don't want your kids to turn out like your parents, and you don't want your kids to turn out like you, who the fuck are they going to turn out like? Your parents, your grandparents, and most of you in this audience have been living quiet lives of desperation. Quiet lives of desperation. When I was growing up and my parents said something that I knew was wrong, I just put my head down and didn't say anything. Because in my time, you were seen and not heard. The point is, the world is different now. The point is, the reason why I get more and more at these talks, of course they're free, and it's my best methodology or my best system to get the word out, that the system is broken. There are no mentor systems anymore to speak of. When I go to universities, I ask the question, how many classes have you had in buying a business? No hands go up. How many classes have you had in selling a business? No hands go up. How many classes have you had in leadership? No hands go up. So the three most important goddamn things to living once you get out of school, nobody teaches. There are no such thing as work-life balance. There are only work-life choices, and you make them, and they have consequences. The first thing you got to get by is your relatives. You cannot say lies without saying relatives. Families, lies. Next thing you got to get by is past your friends. Next thing is just your general guilt. You're not worthy. The next thing are pessimists. The next thing is society. The next thing's fear. No wonder you never reach your goals. Everybody in this room can relate to that little slide. Some are families are the worst. Some your own guilt. Most of you don't, for example, most of you don't like the way you look. You're too fat. You're too skinny. Your tits aren't big enough. Your tits are too big. Your ass isn't big enough. Your ass is too big. I don't have a six-pack. I got a six-pack. And I can go on and on and on. Self-esteem is built the first 7 or 8 years of life. Who are you with the first 7 or 8 years of life? Mom, maybe dad, an older brother, sister, a grandparent, right? What the f do they know about raising anything? What the f do they know about building self-esteem? I rest my case. We are brought in innocent in this life, then life happens. Most info given reference success is wrong unless you are lucky enough to, and that's questionable, to have high performance people, wealth creators as parents. Now, I know what not to do with my grandson, our grandson, because I know what didn't work with our children. Not everything I tried worked, but we now know what works. It is one thing to study war and another thing to live like warriors. You get a six-pack in the kitchen. It's what you eat. There's no correlation between a six-pack and 6% body fat and wealth. Better you're a fat slob, behemoth, drool, snot rolling out your nose. You got a higher probability of being successful than a six-packer. Why? Because you're desperate to fit in. Why are you desperate to fit in? Because you saw your parents be desperate to fit in. The one thing that Josh has is Josh is not desperate to fit into anything. He doesn't care what you think about him, what you say about him. Whereas virtually everybody in this audience cares about what people think and say about you. Because remember, self-esteem is built the first 7 or 8 years, and we already talked about who you're with the first 7 or 8 years. Now, if you were this kid, and your parents were trying to train you to step out of your comfort zone, or have an expanded comfort zone, you might be able to say different. That kid doesn't know that big snake can swallow him. I didn't know that lion could eat my head off when I was 13 years old in that picture. My parents exposed me to risk and fear early in my life. My mother is off camera there on the left. You can't see her. It's hysterics. Because the lion had just had my head in its mouth. Most of your parents wouldn't let you take a picture like that. You might get hurt. And I've continued it all my life. Yes, you can get hurt by the tigers. Of course you can. People do get hurt from time to time. Doesn't look like I'm too worried about it. There's Sally in the back just a few feet behind me. And yes, that's not a Photoshop. The silverback gorilla in Rwanda, Sally and I are this far away from him. And Charles, the big male silverback, had an affinity for blonde girls, my wife being one of. And you can't touch them, but they can touch you. And they touch pretty hard. And yes, we went trekking with lions. And yes, people get hurt, but we've continued to expand our comfort zones all our life. About 4 years ago, we were in New Zealand, Queenstown, And I looked at a big poster on the wall, and the big poster on the wall showed bungee jumping. And I said, Sally, I want to do that. I want to do that. So Sally turns around and says, that's where we are, Dan. We're at the home of bungee jumping. It's right up on that hill. So I signed up the next morning. I go, and there's a big line, about 30, 40 people in the big line waiting to bungee jump. But there's 40 to 60 mile an hour winds gusting. So all the six-pack, pill-popping, 4% body fat millennials, they're going, oh man, when that fucking wind dies out, I'm gonna jump that. So after about 5 or 10 minutes of waiting, I went up to the head of the line. I gave the guy a $100 bill, and I said, don't you think the wind stops? Absolutely, sir. I go and I jump. I go and I jump. I come back down, and the guys are going, hey, that wind, it must have calmed down when we weren't noticing that, and we're gonna. That's your whole life. It's like that. There's never an easy time to make a hard decision. Most of you are married for the wrong reasons. Those of you that have kids had them for the wrong reasons. Once you become fearless, life becomes limitless because it's not something that is stressed unless you go off to the military. But you're here for a reason. You're here because you're looking for answers. Some questions you've never asked. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Tough love works 100%. Extraordinary tough love works better. And vicious tough love works the best. They're like an ex-president trying to raise money to build their libraries. I don't have to do that. And I wouldn't do it. Because what we're here about is the psychology of the high performer. And the reason that you're so poor at it is because you've had no high performance role models. True self-esteem has to be earned. If in any way, shape, manner, or form, this small couple hours helps you on your journey, it's not a journey, because that's another thing, another slide coming up. Life's not a journey, life's a model. But most of you have negative vibes. You're going to surround yourself with people that don't put you outside your comfort zone. So the law of attraction works against you. When you create positive vibes, positive habits, yes, then you'll attract a different kind of person.